And good morning, everyone. On this Wednesday, September 28th, this is going to be a memorable day in the history of Florida. This Category 4, nearly Category 5 hurricane is just about to make landfall in the Fort Myers area on the southwest coast. This is going to bring every kind of hurricane issue to Fort Myers that is potentially deadly and destructive. The first thing is that because of the way where the storm is located and the rotation around the eye like that, this is driving water toward the coast. So here's Marco Island, here's Captiva Island here. Downtown Fort Myers is on the Caloosahatchee River that runs up there. So all of this water that gets pushed up toward the coast by winds 155 miles per hour is the current estimate of the peak winds, but even that's in a narrow band, but a lot of winds are well over 100 miles an hour, all pushing water toward the coast. We'll look at those wind directions here in just a second. So this is going to be a destructive situation, both because of the water. We've talked a lot about the water because the water is so deadly, right? People can't survive underwater, or they can't survive if they're being swept away by water. And then, but also because of the wind, there are no structures in Southwest Florida designed for this kind of wind. It's not like in Miami-Dade and Broward County in new buildings where we design for extremely strong hurricanes and you can feel safe inside. So we're in a situation here where people are going to be in homes that are likely to have winds affect the homes that are stronger than the homes were designed to take. In that Fort Myers metropolitan area, this is an extreme situation, to say the least. Here are the current wind. I don't want you to look at the wind speed so much as the wind directions, and I'm always a little suspicious because sometimes in these situations we lose connectivity. And notice we didn't get a gust. In fact, we only got a partial reading from both Fort Myers and Naples. And the Naples reading actually doesn't look right because the wind in Naples, I'm sure, is coming from this direction now. Well, so in Punta Gorda, this body of water up here is Charlotte Harbor, and this is going to fill with water. The water has been coming out. See the wind in Punta Gorda were from this direction. There you see the little symbol right there. And that was pushing water out the Peace River. The Peace River comes down into here. And so there was actually draining it out of Charlotte Harbor. And then it will get slammed back in there, it looks like, from the south wind. Although if the center, it depends on exactly where the center goes. This looks horrible for Fort Myers. It's a little more questionable. You can see the rotation. Is that going to go right there? And how is that going to affect the storm surge? It's hard to say. The point is the potential is high for life-threatening storm surge, more than life-threatening storm surge, devastating storm surge in and around Punta Gorda and around Charlotte Harbor. It's just tough to say exactly how bad it's going to be because the geometry of the winds right around the eye changes so dramatically with just a little bit of distance. And then, up the islands here, we'll just see. It looks up around Boca Grande and up toward Englewood, just to the north. It's going to be very, very close here, and it's all going to happen here this afternoon. But the effects are going to linger for some time, but this blast is going to happen this afternoon into tonight in this part of Florida. All right, I want to take a look at the radar here just to see. You can see that this is the part where the strongest winds are right there. And you can see that that's rotating around up toward Fort Myers right now. So we have 155 mile an hour winds in this storm. It's likely in that red area in the eye wall right there, which these cells rotate around. And Hurricane Andrew, we kind of learned about this, that the ultra high damage from the wind was done by those cells that rotate around. So right now we see there's one down here on the south side. We see one up here on the north side, and you see the intense lightning. So the lightning might be more current than the radar. So in any case, there are these intense cells rotating around. Unfortunately, it looks like one of them is heading in the direction of Fort Myers. Okay, so here's the path, and there you see it, 155 miles per hour now. And then the idea is, so it has been that this afternoon it would come ashore somewhere here, but it looks like it's moving a little faster than that because it's taken this more direct path to the coast. And you can see that this afternoon was a little inland. So it's probably close to on time, I guess, maybe a little fast. But the thing is that it's clearly taking a kind of right side of the cone track here. And that's not to say that it's not going to come up more up to the middle of the cone. We don't know. But the thing is that what that's going to do is it's going to throw moisture to the north. And of all the concerns about this hurricane, you know, we have these dire concerns for people living there in southwest Florida. But inland and over a vast amount of the inland areas, at least over to Melbourne, and then over to Naples, and I'm going to show you this in detail in a second, tremendous rain as this slowly moves into central Florida near the Orlando area and then begins to turn north. Now, does it turn north offshore or does it turn north more inland? That, of course, remains to be seen, and we have to be ready for both opportunities. But, of course, we have a lot of people that are on here today watching from central Florida. This is expected to be very bad in Orlando and the surrounding counties because you have two things converging here. One is you have this strong hurricane and the remnants of it. You see the forecast is for sustained winds of 60 miles per hour, but when a storm gets inland like this and it's going to grow in size as it gets inland, it gets gustier. So hurricane force gusts are expected. So I was just talking with the folks at Fox 13 or Fox 35 in Orlando, and was talking about Hurricane Charlie. People that were in Orlando or remember Hurricane Charlie from 2004. It was terrible there. There were trees down on top of houses and cars, and power was out for an extended period of time. It was really a bad situation. Well, this is going to be like Charlie in terms of the winds, but the winds are going to blow for longer. The peak winds might not be as high as Charlie, but they're going to blow for longer, and there's going to be torrential rain coming with it. Where Charlie was there and gone, it was like a tornado. This is not going to be that way. It's going to be, so in terms of damage and disruption, think Charlie, but magnified by flooding rain and duration over 2 days, not over a few hours, which was Charlie. So then while we're looking at the cone here, let's talk about North Florida. So once the storm gets up here into the Orlando area, the center of circulation, of course, the circulation is going to be like this. And by that time, we're going to start piling water into this part of North Florida and on up the Georgia coast into South Carolina. So, and because the circulation is going to get bigger, the fetch of water coming in here is going to be even more profound. So the Hurricane Center is issuing, I want to get the latest storm surge forecast for 3 to 5 feet of storm surge in the St. Johns River and along the coast there, along the, let me see how far north that goes. From South Sanitee River in South Carolina all the way down, including the St. Johns River, to the Flagler-Volusia County line. So in that whole sort of catcher's mitt of a coastline there, that water is going to pile up and low-lying areas are going to flood from saltwater storm surge, and you're going to have very heavy rain on top of it. So what will happen, unfortunately, as if you live in North Florida, you know the St. Johns River comes in and then kind of makes a dip down to the south, down to Palatka and so forth. So if you have, and it flows in that direction. So if you have a lot of rain falling in here, which we expect, that water is going to go into the St. Johns River and try and flow out at the same time that the ocean water is being pushed in, and that results in significant flooding, and that's what happened in Hurricane Irma, and we think that is going to happen again with this storm. The only kind of hope that that's not going to happen so badly is if the storm were to take a more inland track, but there's no indication of that. In fact, if anything, it's taking a bit of a, if it stays to the right side of the cone, it's definitely going offshore of north central Florida. All right, here's that rainfall forecast, and then I'm going to show you the flooding forecast in a second. There's the band. You see it there, and you see it extends down to the storm and like that. So there's the rainfall you see in the peak areas, 12 to 18 inches in here in central Florida, up by Jacksonville, with maximum in isolated areas of 2 feet or more. So this is this is just from a flood standpoint, unrelated to the wind standpoint, and unrelated by the coast to the storm surge. This is going to be a horrendous problem. So that was going to be the computer models, and they don't show for some reason, but I can tell you that the computer models are right down the cone. There's no real uncertainty now in the computer models. They settled down and they're right up the cone. So here's the forecast from the Weather Prediction Center, which is essentially the National Weather Service, and you see this red area. This is extreme flash flood threat in that red area today. So this is today into tomorrow from Naples up to about Newport Richey, so say Pasco County to the north, say Volusia County on the east coast, including the Ocala area and Point South, down to about Melbourne on the east coast, including, of course, the Orlando metropolitan area in the center, including Winter Garden, Winter Haven, and all of central Florida. Now, let's look at tomorrow, and what you see is, indeed, as the storm moves north, the rain threat moves north, but look, Orlando is still in the rain threat, so that's why the intensity in terms of the totals are going to include areas here in the Orlando area and around there, because it's going to start today and last into tomorrow as the storm kind of slowly goes by there. Again, Gainesville, Ocala, all in this extreme flood threat area, and then we get up into Jacksonville and again down to Melbourne. So including the Space Coast here in this threat for extreme rainfall. Okay, so that's what I have. So let me take a look here and see what people are asking about. And hold on here, and let's talk about Spring Hill, because we talked a lot about Hernando County over the last few days. Could this turn back to the west? No, we don't think so. I think that you may get significant rainfall and maybe some gusty winds in Hernando County, Spring Hill. So this is north of Tampa now. In fact, you're expected to get likely flooding in that area. But in terms of the worst of the storm, no, that's not a threat for you guys any longer. Let me check for the cues here, which really helps me out. How far inland will the storm surge go and affect Fort Myers? Well, the Caloosahatchee goes about 10 miles inland. There's nothing really to stop the water from going 10 miles inland or so up the Caloosahatchee. Lehigh Gardens, which is a developed area in the western side of Lee County, is well outside of the storm surge zone. There are other parts of Lee County that aren't in the main storm surge zone, but and they're where the shelters are. Although I'm not 100% sure that they didn't open shelters that might have a flooding problem if this is a worst case scenario. The forecast and the latest forecast for the Fort Myers area down to Bonita Beach and Charlotte Harbor is 12 to 18 feet above normal high tide. So if you're in downtown Fort Myers and you're used to how high the water is there on the Caloosahatchee in the marinas there down by West 1st Street, for example, imagine where the high tide is there. Now you're talking about 12 to 18 feet of water above that. And then that water is going to push up the Caloosahatchee. So until there's a reason for it to stop, then that's not, it's going to flood all along there. And it'll flood for some, depending on the elevation, some blocks inland, even in downtown Fort Myers. But the huge threat, I think, is in Cape Coral, because the southern part of Cape Coral is so low. It does go uphill as you get north in Cape Coral, but the southern part is so low, and also South Fort Myers, and of course Fort Myers Beach. Fort Myers Beach is likely to be deep underwater, as is most of Captiva Island and Sanibel Island, unfortunately. Let's just answer that. Be sure that Eva in Lehigh Acres asked. Lehigh Acres, you're going to get a terrible windstorm, and you may or may not get a bad rainstorm. It's going to rain there, but probably not, horrendously. But a very, very bad windstorm, but not storm surge flooding. The Lehigh Acres is well inland, and it's not an issue there. So let's see. All right, here's a question. Our son evacuated from Sarasota to Naples. Can you please comment on the impact expected in Naples? Well, Lauren, I wish he hadn't done that, but there are safe places in Naples. Naples is the north part of Naples, and the central part of Naples is actually fairly high ground. The south part is low, and as you get down toward Everglades City, it's very low. So there is going to be flooding near the coast in Naples, but there is plenty of high ground. So this is going to be a matter of staying safe in the strong winds, where you protect yourself by being in an interior part of the house. If you're in a high rise, you go to anybody in a high rise in a high wind area here, for instance, in Fort Myers or anywhere in Southwest Florida, don't stay in the apartment. Go in, assuming you're in a high rise that has an interior hallway, go into the hallway and set up camp there immediately. And the backup is going to be the stairwell. And you don't want, while the wind is blowing, and it's going to blow all day today, until the wind lets up, you don't want to be opening any doors to the apartment. Because what you don't know is if something has happened, a window is broken in the apartment, and when you open the door, you can get injured by the door, or the door can fly off the hinges and fly around, or some terrible thing can happen. So you want to get in the hallway and stay put until the winds die down and you can do some kind of evaluation of the building and safely navigate there. So I hope that your son is in a safe place there in Naples. Let's see, more questions about Naples, of course, but because Naples, the storm surge forecast there is 7 to 11 feet. Let me just look and see if I see any update here on the analysis for Naples. No, Naples appears to be in the same area, down. Like I said, the south part of Naples, and there is around the part of Naples that's near like Royal Harbor and Aqualane Shores, and that part of Naples. There you have potential for storm surge, and because you have 7 to 11 feet, and it kind of goes up near Tamiami Trail, and in fact, some water may actually come over Tamiami Trail in parts of Naples. So this is a situation, but it's not going to be like the Fort Myers situation, but it's going to be significant in Naples. 7 to 11 feet above normal high tide is the forecast. So people need to be in high locations in Naples. Now, if you're back in Golden Gate on the more inland, you're okay from storm surge. This is really a wind event. But in Naples, especially up to the Tamiami Trail, which is US 41, and in East Naples, you may even have issues near the Tamiami Trail. So this is not, this is nothing to be fooled around with. You want to get yourself in a high place if you're anywhere near the water in Naples. What's the worst time for Orlando? So this is going to pick up some. Let's go back and look at the cone, which will give us the timing. Oh, look, the models showed up there for some reason. And you can see that all of the models, ignore the purple one over there. In fact, we should take that off. But all the models pretty much go in the same way. And so we don't have any doubt that this is going to happen pretty much as forecast. So the new forecast here looks like 70 miles an hour estimate for sustained, and that's going to be well over hurricane force. So this is tomorrow morning. So this is going to, and when we say tomorrow morning in this case, we mean early in the morning hours, 8 a.m. in the morning or so. So this is going to pick up tonight, and it's going to pick up in gusts. So you're going to get downpours in gusts, and the gusts will increase, and the gusts will increase. The worst of it appears like it'll be in Central Florida tomorrow, and then it will just tail off during the day tomorrow, so that by tomorrow night it will have substantially tailed off. So the strongest winds will be, looks like tomorrow in the morning hours, but it's going to be an extended period of strong winds in Orlando. All right, here's a question. Can you compare Ian to Andrew in effects? Well, Andrew was a horrendous windstorm. This is not as strong a windstorm, even though the peak winds are only 10 miles per hour less than Andrew. But the thing is, this is also hitting in Southwest Florida that doesn't have as good a construction in terms of older homes as even in the Andrew time that many of the homes were constructed in the Miami area. Andrew had a horrendous storm surge, 17 feet of storm surge in Biscayne Bay, but nobody lived where that peak storm surge hit. Unfortunately, here a lot of people live where this storm surge is going to come in, so it's a different situation. Also, in this case, we have a wider circulation, so more people are going to be affected by the strong winds. A bigger corridor. Andrew was like a 20-mile wide tornado. This is going to be dramatically more than that, maybe 80 miles wide, something. A big swath of damage directly affected by the circulation of the storm. So it'll be a different kind of, in terms of the scope, not the intensity, but the scope of the windstorm will be different here. It'll affect many more locations. Someone is asking if Governor DeSantis is going to drop tons of dry ice into the storm. No, we don't do that anymore. They did a lot of testing of that in the 60s in Operation Storm Fury, and it was inconclusive. So that's not a Governor DeSantis thing in any case. This hurricane is what this hurricane is, and we have to deal with it as it comes here. Okeechobee County. What should they expect? Well, you'll be on the fringe. If you notice here, we have significant expectation that the center of the storm is going to be somewhere in the cone, but you're going to be on the high wind side of the storm. So the winds will be coming around like this across the lake and in Okeechobee County. So we expect very high winds there, and the maybe a little bit of good news is there is dry air wrapping around the southern side of the storm. So the rain is going to be on the north side and the east side of the storm, not the southern side. So yes, it'll be very windy and gusty in Okeechobee County, but not the torrential rain with the super strong gusts that we expect to see more farther north from a line north of you across the state for the whole rest of North Florida. Let's see who else we have. We have thousands of folks here have made comments. Thank you so much. So how slow will it go? So, a little bit better news than we have had here the last few days, where the expectation was it was going to crawl at a walking speed. Now it's forecast to pick up speed a bit, but still it's going to be a slow moving storm, and a big storm that's slow moving just causes an extended duration of bad weather. So you ask about the central pressure on the storm right now. What is the latest pressure with the new advisory? We've been talking so much here. I haven't seen. So down to 937 millibars, which is desperately low, with winds at 155 miles per hour, moving at 9 miles per hour now. Now, yesterday we were afraid this was going to move at 4 or 5 miles per hour, and you'd say, okay, that doesn't sound like a lot of difference, but it's double. It doubles the amount of time that whatever effect the hurricane is having on the coast or on neighborhoods or whatever, it doubles it if it's slow. So at least it's not crawling at 4 or 5 miles per hour, even though 9 is still drastically slow. Let's see, what is this question? You keep discussing Melbourne. What about Palm Bay? Any discussion for Melbourne includes Palm Bay. The effects of the hurricane are much, much larger. Yes, Palm Bay is immediately to the south of the city of Melbourne, but no difference in the expected weather there. Port St. Lucie, what can we expect? Well, Port St. Lucie, down here by Fort Pierce, is going to be on the edge. You can expect some strong winds and some strong rain bands. You can expect the possibility, the other thing I haven't mentioned are the tornadoes. So had a number of tornadoes with this system already, and that is going to be an issue going forward, especially in Central and North Florida. The way that the system is arcing, and let me see if I can go back and actually let me take off Cindy's question there and go back in here, and let me see if I can't, hold on. Let me see if I can't zoom this out so we can see. Look at that. There's a tornado warning right now there we are for DeSoto, Hardy, and Highlands County. You can see those bright reds there. That's where we're going to have the tornadoes occurring. But what we see is up here in outer bands coming in to the Cape area, New Smyrna Beach, and so forth. This is another intense cell coming in. So it's not that every one of those intense cells is going to have a tornado in it, but if there's a tornado, it's going to be in one of those intense cells that's in one of these bands. You see this tornado warning down here in this band going through the Tampa Bay area and Sarasota now, this other outer band up here. Now, I started this conversation talking about the Port St. Lucie area, and here we are over by Fort Pierce. Let me see if I can maneuver here. So we go in closer here, you'll see, all right, Sebastian, Palm City, Port St. Lucie. So you can see that these bands are going to still affect the east coast of Florida, but if you happen to be, like many areas are now, in between bands, it's going to be breezy and really not bad at all. So the I-95 corridor in South Florida is kind of out of it, but as the storm moves in this direction, then all these bands are going to move with it. So this band here is going to move over the I-95 corridor. That's all yet to come, and there'll probably be another band behind that. So we're not at all done in South Florida, but because there's dry air in the circulation down here, that lowers the chance of tremendous flooding rains. You've had enough flooding rains and damage from the tornadoes that went through there already. Okay, let's see. Let's see what Amy is asking. If it does go into the Atlantic, can it re-strengthen into a hurricane, make a possible second landfall? That's not currently anticipated, although if it were to swing wide in the Atlantic, then maybe, but the atmospheric conditions are not going to be conducive for that. The atmospheric conditions are going to be conducive for it expanding. Remember, what's going to kind of drive it north here is a dip in the jet stream and kind of hostile upper level winds. So that's why the Hurricane Center is forecasting a reduction in winds. So the 70 miles an hour pertains to this line going through Orlando, the 65, the line going through about Daytona Beach, and then this 65, the line right about the Florida-Georgia line. And then points north of there will have, let me get rid of that. You see the winds are forecast to die off as we get north as the storm comes inland again. So that's not an expectation of it doing that. And there is warm water out there, so it might peak up a little bit or at least maintain itself, but the upper level winds are forecast to be hostile, and that is not part of the problem. But with this larger diameter storm, large diameter storms produce storm surge even without having hurricane force winds. What about the canal? Well, okay, one of the things I didn't mention, but maybe it's obvious, is in Fort Myers and Naples, we have lots of canals. So like in Cape Coral, that city is all canals. People live on the waterway and they love that, but those canals are going to fill with water, and this is going to be a very dangerous thing. So canals in general are going to be flood zones in this case. Let's clarify this. How many inches for extreme flooding risk in Volusia County? Well, it varies completely by the individual place, but the Weather Prediction Center, and they really do the analysis on this, have put up an extreme risk for Volusia County for flooding. It's not about the inches of rain because, obviously the more inches of rain you have, the more likely it's going to flood, but it's also the water running downhill into the lower elevations. So guys, it's noon and I got to go to be on Fox Weather. So I just want to urge everybody to be safe here. I think I outlined where the danger zones are. The biggest danger zone, of course, is in the general Fort Myers area, plus or minus, Naples on up to about Englewood, I guess. But then also Central Florida with this torrential rain that's forecast and the gusty winds over hurricane strength, going to take down trees. Be very careful where you're parking your car. Don't park it in a flood zone or someplace that just floods in heavy rain. Get your car as far away from that as possible. Try and put it in a garage on high ground. And if you haven't done it, now is the time to get yourself at least 7 days worth of non-perishable foods in case you're stuck at home with no power for 7 days, which is a very real possibility. Because the more it rains, the weaker the trees are, and the more likely the wind is to take down the trees. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you after the 5 o'clock advisory this afternoon, probably about 5:15. Just watch for it about then. Take care and get prepared. Preparedness is how you have good luck, right? That's a rule. All right, take care, everybody.